So we're going to move over from Vancouver to somewhere else in the enormous expanse that is Canada. Sriman Jayananda Prabhu, who met the devotees in 1979, met Gurudev and didn't mess around in 2000 because he took Harinam and Diksha in the very same year. Prabhu, whereabouts in Canada are you? Oh, I put him on mute. Sorry, let me unmute him.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, well
I'm in Victoria. I'm actually very close to.
Oh, I love Victoria. Yeah, because I used to go from Pemberton to Vancouver to Victoria. We used to have lunch in Victoria, then over to Tofino Island.
One of my favorites.
I know that area. So you're 8 hours behind as well. So it's 1:05 there. If you can take it to 1:35, I'm looking forward to. Do you make candles or something in your workshop?
Yeah, this is my candle studio.
Pretty cool.
It's the only place I could find to get away from everybody.
Beautiful. Great. Well, it's all yours. You have the Zoom Vyasa now, Prabhu. All yours.
Thank you. Dandavats, everybody. I wasn't sure what to speak about. So many of Gurudev's instructions, and it's a funny thing. So much of the time I spent with Gurudev, it's like I spend my life decoding it or getting, the memories only seem to come to me by grace, and a lot of times I can't even actually remember the exact words he said or what that interaction was like. But I thought, what is really interesting to me is just how I came to meet Gurudev, and that whole journey was pretty incredible. And just from the perspective of someone growing up in ISKCON, how the ebb and flow of Krishna consciousness through my life, coming to actually meeting Gurudev, I thought was pretty incredible. And then there are a few things that I do remember very distinctly about the time that I did spend with Gurudev. But I was born in '79. That's when I met the devotees, because my dad, Trilokanath, and my mom, Kirchur, were both Prabhupada disciples. And in fact, even after they split and my dad remarried, Mahojvala, my stepmom's also a devotee. So I grew up with lots of devotees around me. I grew up in Toronto, in the Toronto temple, for the first 4 years of my life. So I have some actually reminding me, looking at Shyama Priya's beautiful Jagannath behind her there. Growing up, that was, I spent my first 4 years in the Toronto temple, and I remember, I have so many early images of just, I was obsessed with Jagannath, the Jagannath deities there. And I remember, growing up those early years in a really blissful ISKCON, at least what my, so this was like 79 to 82, 83. And I remember the whole building shaking with these incredible kirtans and amazing prasadam, and just the temple always being full of people and really beautiful. And with that, in that post Prabhupada leaving time, I think, obviously I wasn't terribly aware of it as a little guy, but I think, the enthusiasm was waning somewhat there, and things, things were declining a little bit, and eventually my parents and a lot of people left the temple and went to live in other communities. And anyway, long story short, yeah, we left the temple. We lived in many other places, and I was not interested really in Krishna consciousness as a, like, I think, you know, from the time I was 8 until 16 or so, it was not, yeah, I kind of resented growing up in this different space and not fitting in with the other kids, et cetera, et cetera. And so it wasn't until I guess I was about 16 that I read my dad's Bhagavad Gita and had a real change of heart and started to become very interested. I started asking him lots of questions, and then, you know, he gave me some beads. I started chanting, and I started my own, started doing my own practice. But even then, at 16, 17, 18, I really didn't want to have anything to do with ISKCON or the organization of it, because I just, yeah, it's weird, you know, seeing everybody's admitting as much now, but back then you didn't really talk about it. But it felt like, yeah, I felt like when I'd go back to the temple in Toronto, when I'd go to any like devotee gatherings, it felt somewhat empty. And even though at that point I was practicing on my own and I was really into it, I was just feeling a lot of judgment and a lot of rules and a lot, it wasn't speaking to me at all. But I was, you know, getting really deep into my own personal practice at that time. And so it was a really confusing time, because yeah, I really wanted to be involved, but I didn't feel much from what I saw out there. The one devotee that I kind of connected with, my dad had a place up at Sharanagati, and there was Gurudeva Maharaj there and his few disciples, and everyone called him the lumberjack Swami, because he just lived in his little cabin and very, very simple, tended to a cow there. And anyway, we really connected, and I connected with some of his disciples and started spending some time at the center they had in Victoria. And then, yeah, the fateful event, all came down to Shyamrani and her visiting us in Victoria. So, yeah, my dad called me up and said that this Prabhupada disciple, old disciple of his second female disciple, was coming to town, and she was going to be staying with my dad and my stepmom, and that I should really come and meet her. Yeah, it was, that was when I got bit. I feel like it was quite something. I think everything that you know, Shyamrani's preaching is so amazing, and it really was unlike anything I had heard yet. And all of the things that I was feeling deep in my heart, and all of the you know, validation that I needed for what I was feeling, my genuine connection with Krishna, she gave me that validation, and it was the first time I heard anybody talk about Raganuga Bhakti, and about, you know, spontaneous love, and about, you know, it's just everything was like a direct hit. All the points she was making just really lit me up. And yeah, she said, you have to go meet Srila Narayana Maharaj. If this is everything I'm saying is coming from him. And we actually spent a lot of time together during her time there in Victoria, and I became really inspired. And then I was just, it all happened so fast. We went to a program on Salt Spring Island, and I'm trying to remember who all was there. It was a lovely program, and everybody was saying, "Oh, the next place Gurudeva is going to be is in Alachua." Oh, and this is like spring, or yeah, late spring, early summer of 2000, and yeah, the next place he was going to be was Alachua, and yeah, I was just on fire, and I was sure I had to go, and so I tried to arrange. I was going to go hang out at the Seattle airport and just try to get on a standby flight or whatever I could do. And amazingly, I woke up the next morning and saw it was Govinda Dasi's property, bless her heart, who's recently passed away. I went into her house, and she said, "Oh, Jayananda, I bought you a ticket to Alachua. You leave tomorrow." And which was amazing. And so I went with another devotee from Victoria, and yeah, some crazy late night flight. And then we rented a car and drove from Jacksonville to Alachua, and arrived just during Mangalarti on, I think, the first morning of the festival we were having there. And yeah, I remember we just fell in and sat down with all the devotees there. And yeah, it's one of those moments you just can't really put into words, but I remember just seeing Gurudev walking. He was out for his morning walk when we arrived and sat down in the pandal, and then we saw him coming over the rise on his morning walk with two sannyasis with him, and yeah, I just knew at that moment, yeah, it's like, how do you explain to someone what that experience is like when you haven't even met? And the moment I saw him come over the hill towards the pandal, I knew that was my Gurudev, and that I had to take initiation. And yeah, it was a life-altering experience in that moment. And yeah, I wish I could remember more of the details of what he spoke about that day, but I just remember being in a trance and feeling like this is what I have to do with my life now, which was a real big leap for me. I was, yeah, definitely still had my long hair, and didn't think I was ready for that, and didn't necessarily go with that intention. But as soon as I saw him, I knew I had to. And but I still felt like a lot of reservations, like I wasn't ready and I wasn't qualified and all of these things. So I talked to Shyamarani, who was also there, and she said, "Well, let's go talk to Gurudev and see what he says." And and yeah, that was my first meeting with Gurudev. I wish I could remember it. Sometimes it comes to me more of the details, because I know we talked about a few things, but you know, it's all a blur, but Shamarani introduced me to Gurudev, said this is Jayananda, his parents, Prabhupada disciples, and he'd really like to take initiation, but he doesn't know if he's qualified or if he is ready yet or anything. And yeah, I don't remember all of the things we said, but the main thing Gurudev said, he asked me, said, you know that eventually you will have to leave this body and that you will move on and take another body. I was like, yes. Said, no harm, you can do. I was like, really? Yeah, and it was like the most basic instruction, but yeah, he was just saying, you know the basics, you've grown up in this, like, yeah, you can. And then I don't remember the rest of our exchange, but I just remember, yeah, it felt, I was so shocked by him saying, oh no, yeah, come on in, you know. And so yeah, I had a wonderful ceremony and took Harinam there, and wonderful rest of the festival there. And then yeah, as Shama Priya was saying, he was like, all of you should come to Parikram. So that year, yeah, after I got home, I just started working and saving money as much as I could. I actually was supposed to go with a bunch of other devotees as well. We were all fired up, and one by one they started having things happen in their lives where they weren't able to make it, and they all started dropping away, and I was just determined that I was not going to let the opportunity pass me by. So I yeah, saved money for a long time, and went to Parikram in the year 2000, which was such a wonderful experience. And yeah, I often think back on that time and how special that was, especially in the early time when I first arrived there. Yeah, I would never have that kind of time again with Gurudev. And you know, I arrived in late September, so a few weeks before everyone started arriving, and there were maybe only like 20 or so devotees staying at the Mat in Mathura, and yeah, it was ecstatic. Every morning he would go for his morning walk, and he would come in, and there would be just a handful, 7, 8 of us sitting there, and right after his walk he'd come in and we'd all sit down and talk with everybody so personally and casually, kind of, how are you, you know, and yeah, I had no idea at the time how special that was and how big everything would grow in the coming years. Yeah, we had there were some beautiful moments. I remember joining Gurudev on some morning walks. Remember following behind him and Brajanath and Madhav Maharaj on morning walks on a couple of occasions, and then getting reprimanded for not being back at Kirtan. But you know, those are beautiful memories too. And yeah, that whole time there were a few really, you know, I remember every instance. that I had a personal connection with Gurudeva, and they're all like such beautiful jewels, each one of those meetings. Which one was there? So many lovely meetings. I don't know which one to tell. Oh, I know the one that that I thought was a really incredible one. Was when we were on Parikram, and was it Varshana, wherever, it was Srimati Vishaka's appearance place, birthplace, I believe. And I remember it was one of the days we were on the bus going to so many sites that day, and it was blistering hot. It was just one of those days where it was unbearable, and we visited many sites already, and Vishaka's birthplace was the last stop, and everyone was super dehydrated and not in a good way. I was actually delirious at that point, and we got out of the bus, and there must have been multiple buses. I just remember there was like a sea of people rushing towards the site to pay their obeisances, and fighting through the sea of people and trying to get there. Eventually, I just kind of gave up and was like, I'm not even gonna make it there. And I must have looked terrible. I was just dehydrated and sweaty and stuck in all these people, and I was ready to give up and just not go. And then all of a sudden I look up and there's Gurudev right in front of me. And he looks at me and says, "Have you been?" I said, "Oh, no, Gurudev." He grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, "Then go!" And he pushed me through, and suddenly somehow it was just one of those crazy instances where I made my way through everyone and got to the place to pay my obeisances. And yeah, that one really stuck with me, because Gurudev was so strong. I just remember it was like it was a total out of this world experience. He just grabbed my shoulder and with all this strength, like just kind of woke me up and pushed me. And I was like, always thought back on that one as like, that's quite a metaphorical experience there. Gurudev, grabbing us and pushing us towards the lotus feet of the gopis. That was a beautiful experience. And sadly, after, how am I doing for, oh yeah, good. Yeah, after that experience, and being on Parikram, life took a turn for me. I ended up having a big family, 4 kids, and just everything sped up really fast. As soon as I left the Sangha for a minute, material world took over, and I had so many aspirations when I got back to go down into the mutt in San Diego, and was had all these plans that as soon as you dip your toes in back into the material world, it just kind of swallows you up. And I don't think I saw Gurudev again until 2004 in Badger, and I saw him a handful more times. I think a couple times in Badger, once in Vancouver and once in Boise. And it was it's hard looking back at how much opportunity I missed out on, and that I always wished I'd stayed with the Sangha and was able to travel more with Gurudev. And just, it's, yeah, you know, I think probably everybody feels that way, no matter how much time you spent with Gurudev, that, you know, those short 15 years or whatever it was that he was traveling in the West, you know, we're like, why didn't I drop everything and just be there as much as humanly possible? But yeah, but Gurudev gave me a really nice instruction when I saw him in Badger. And at that point, yeah, I raising all these kids and working multiple jobs, and just my life had gotten so busy, and yeah, I wasn't sure what to do, how I could, you know, I was like, you know, basically said to Gurudev, you know, how can I serve you? What can I do? My material life is so full, and I don't have any time, and I just want to know how I can still serve you. And he gave me a really merciful response. He said, you should work hard to maintain your family and try to increase your Krishna consciousness. And I felt it was so merciful that he gave me such a simple instruction, because it allowed me, you know, for the many years since, to look at whatever I'm doing and say, you know, well, that was Gurudev's instruction. Was, he didn't say drop everything and you should come travel with me. He said you should work hard and maintain your family and try your best to increase your Krishna consciousness. So I felt that was really merciful for him to give me that simple instruction that I can take as my Gurudev's direct instruction. And yeah, I wish I could remember more of all of those individual meetings, and yeah, it's so hard to actually do them any justice. And you know, like I said, a lot of them I feel like get locked away, and sometimes even in dreams they'll come to me and I'll remember something that I'm like, oh my God, I forgot all about that time that I saw Gurudev and he said this, or you know, which is kind of amazing. They're all still in there, but you know, they do get covered. But yeah, anyway, I'm not one to feel like I can do any justice to talking about Gurudev's instructions or anything to that effect, but I thought I would tell my story of how I met him and how what a beautiful and transcendental experience that was. So, Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripasam Devyecha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo.
Well, I realize now we're even luckier to have Purnamai in London, because I'm meeting the Canadian Sangha, and it must have been difficult for her to leave that Sangha, because you guys are beautiful. And I wanted to say actually something to you, Prabhu, is that actually not having all the words and not having all the memories and the details is actually pretty cool, because what we're really trying to connect to is a spiritual feeling. Like in the spiritual world, they're not talking in words. It's all a dance, it's all a song, and the dance of the song is at a level of vibration, and it's at a melody that we can't even conceive of. So actually what we're looking is for transmission. And there was a lot of transmission in what you said. And actually sometimes not having the words can be, I remember there was one, I think she was Bolivian, or maybe no, I think she was Venezuelan, no, Bolivian, I can't remember, South America. Her English, she could hardly speak English, and pretty much every third sentence was, he's so wonderful. And that's pretty much the whole 20 minutes I think she was on. He's so wonderful. And there was so much transmission in what she said. And I felt that from you. You may not have had all the memories, like, you know, beautifully written down in words, but I felt that you really connected. You were connected to Srila Gurudev, you are connected to Srila Gurudev, and that is what transmitted to me. By, like, for me, everyone who comes on Bhakti Zoom, you're all playing flute, you're all playing the flute for Krishna. We're all wanting to be the flute, and Gurudev is playing that flute. And whether that note is the details of every bit that happened in the meeting, or whether it's just a kind of a more ethereal transmission of mood, it's beautiful. And I'm very, very more than happy to be connected with Srila Gurudev in that way. And you're also expressing some lamentation of not having spent maybe more time with Srila Gurudev. And I understand, I wouldn't want to contradict that lamentation, but also it's important to remember that the Vani is actually superior to the Vapu, which means that at any point in time, if we are in any lamentation that we haven't spent enough time with Srila Gurudev, Srila Gurudev has empowered us through so many means, whether it's the black box, the Zoom box, the real box actually being there, whatever box it is, we have the books box, we have the ability to connect with that Vani here and now. And like, you think of Srila Prabhupada, he didn't actually spend very much time with Jagat Gurudev at all. But he took that instruction that he was given in 1922, and he started implementing it for real in 1965, 43 years later, having imbibed and digested and realized the full import of the message and brought it to the West. So Vani over Vapu any day. And the great thing about Vani is we can grab that Vani any day. We never have to lament about Vani because we can have that today. So that's why, going back to what Shama Puri is saying, don't be hopeless. We never have to be hopeless because we have Guru and we have Parampara that's given us so much, so much Vani.
Those are the two things that Gurudev always said that I think probably every one of you hears in their heads are the don't be hopeless and don't be weak. You know?
Exactly.
Constantly giving that instruction in almost every class. And yeah, I love having that voice in my head.
And also the instructions he gave you at the end were really beautiful. And I think that's the magic of Gurudev is he's able to see our Manjari form and our Seva. And obviously, depending on our adhikar, to most of us, including myself, he's not disclosing that before the appropriate moment, but he's able to see us in our real Swarup. And at the same time, he's got one eye open going, he knows what our conditioning is. So he's able to give us instructions that are appropriate for us now, but with such compassion, he's able to give us that instruction and also see us as we really are, i.e. in the spiritual world, simultaneously without one clashing with the other. Whereas we often walk around kind of a bit bifurcated, you know, I'm meant to be this pure spiritual being, but how come I have all this demonic like tendencies? How does that coexist in one conscious? He hasn't got any problem seeing us in that what we think is a duality. He's just seeing it as an evolution that is guaranteed to happen. Like I said to Shama Priya, 1 lava, 1/16th of a second, he glances at us. He knows we're there. It's just a question of, well, it's not even a question of time because we're actually already there in the ever-present present. We just have to let our consciousness catch up to that reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually a bit disappointed when I went to see him in Badger and he gave me that instruction, and I was like, well, obviously, you know, I was like looking for something, some way out of what I was doing or some.
No, but you've got the instruction of Arjuna on the battlefield. He's giving you the instruction of Krishna and Arjuna.
Exactly. That's exactly.
There's so many layers to that instruction. You could go through 10 lifetimes with that one instruction.
Yes, exactly.
It's an amazing instruction.
Which I realized later.
Yeah. It's amazing. That's the thing about Gurudev. He's like the most positive virus because he puts something in you, in your psyche, that the instruction in 2000 becomes a different instruction in 2005, another one in 2000. It evolves with you as your consciousness evolves, you know?
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing with us, Prabhu. Beautiful. Two Canadians in one session. Now,